News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
KVNU News Time is 4:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. Faith-based congregations and other groups will collaborate with the Utah Food Bank for the third statewide Feed Utah food drive. Residents across the state will receive door hangers this week leading up to the drive, and the public is asked to support the initiative by placing a bag of non-perishable food outside their front door by 9 a.m. this Saturday. Volunteers will pick up donated food, then collect and deliver it to Utah Food Bank's warehouses, Macy's groceries, and agencies and partner locations, that is, across the state. The food drive is the result of a partnership between the Utah Food Bank and its partner agencies, Macy's Grocery, Just Serve, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The donations will help provide food to the estimated 317,000 Utahns and 1 in 10 Utah kids who are not sure where their next meal will come from. Organizers are asking for commercially packaged, non-glass, non-perishable, and nutritious, ideally low-sodium and low-sugar items. The most needed food items include beef stew, chili, peanut butter, boxed meals, canned meats, and canned fruits and vegetables. Residents can participate in a variety of ways, including leaving a bag of non-perishable food donations by their door, donating funds using the QR code on the door hangers that will be distributed to homes, or volunteering to help receive food donations. Drop-off sites in Cache Valley include the Cache Community Food Pantry, Macy's in Providence, the Smithfield Civic Center, and most stake centers for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. To find out more about Feed Utah, including how to sign up to volunteer, donate online, or find your nearest food drop-off location, visit utahfoodbank.org. KVNU News Time is 4:05. KVNU weather for tonight. Rain and snow in our forecast tonight, and then a chance of snow, but little or no snow accumulation expected. Overnight low in the upper 20s, and then on Wednesday, slight chance of snow, mostly cloudy, mid-30s for the high. Mostly cloudy Wednesday night with some winds out of the north and then switching around to the east, maybe gusting as high as 40 miles an hour Wednesday night into early Thursday. Thursday giving way to mostly sunny skies and a high temperature in the mid-40s. It's been to 44. It's 43 right now at KVNU. If you own a business and your worker comp rates are skyrocketing, Matt Robbins with Quality First Insurance has answers to your questions. For more information, go to q1ins.com.
Roof Rescue is your local roofing specialist, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry no matter the weather. Their team of experienced roofers is here to serve you, providing top-quality service at affordable prices. From minor repairs to complete roof replacements, they've got you covered. Remember, your roof is your first line of defense in protecting your family from the elements. So don't wait until the next storm to discover your roof problems. Call Roof Rescue today at 435-999-4268. They're your trusted local roofing experts, here to keep your home safe and dry. Roof Rescue, celebrating 10 years of providing watertight peace of mind.
KVNU News Time is 4:06. As the USU men's championship basketball team prepares for appearances in its conference tournament this week and next week's national playoffs, another group of Aggies wound up a recent competition in the national top 20. A 6-person team of Aggie mathematics scholars scored in the top 17% of the 471 institutions in the internationally renowned William Lowell Putnam mathematical competition. They completed 2 demanding 3-hour sessions to achieve their ranking. USU team members are Carter Green, Hiram Cooper, Jason Atwood, Brian Armenta Valdez, Cole Niederman, and Emily Westman. Niam Noon, the team's faculty mentor, said the Putnam competition is the preeminent mathematics event for undergraduate college students in the United States and Canada. More than 4,000 student competitors from the two countries were involved. And a Bozeman, Montana man pleaded guilty to assaulting a woman on a flight from Salt Lake City to Bozeman. 32-year-old Hunter Dietrich is facing a maximum of 6 months in prison, a $5,000 fine, and 1 year of supervised release. The defendant pleaded guilty to assault on board an aircraft in the Special Aircraft Jurisdiction of the United States. As charged in superseding information, Dietrich faces a maximum of 6 months in prison, a $5,000 fine, and 1 year of supervised release. U.S. Magistrate Judge Kathleen DeSoto presided. The court set sentencing for July 10th. Dietrich was released pending further proceedings. In court documents, the government alleged that on February 11th, Delta Airlines Flight 3789 traveled from Salt Lake City to Bozeman. During the flight, Dietrich, a passenger, disobeyed repeated instructions from the flight crew to behave himself. In addition, Dietrich approached a woman passenger during the flight and touched her body in various places, despite the woman passenger telling him to stop. Assistant U.S. Attorney Zeno Bacchus is prosecuting the case. The FBI and Bozeman Airport Police conducted the investigation. KBNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Sean Hannity from 1 till 4 on News Talk KVNU 102 FM and 610 AM.
Have you pulled your spring sheets out of storage, and do they smell stale and need freshening up? How about your blankets and your quilts? Are things dingy from winter use? Well, go to Mount Logan Laundry. It takes no time at all to freshen everything up with their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, and it costs a lot less than the dry cleaners, and free Wi-Fi and drop-off service, too. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town. Find them at 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham City on the corner of 1st East and 7th South.
Wednesday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. More primary results roll in. Is Trump officially the nominee? We'll discuss. Plus, Buck.
Looking at what the Biden administration is going to do on the issue of being soft on crime. It's a problem for Democrats. Could it drag Joe down in a way that will change the outcome? We'll discuss that and much more coming up on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU 102 FM and 610 AM.
The United States Deputy Sheriff's Association is a national nonprofit and the largest non-governmental provider of services to law enforcement. The USDSA assists city, county, state, and federal agencies with free safety equipment donations and officer survival training, along with cash donations to families of law enforcement officers who perish in the line of duty, college scholarships for the children of law enforcement, a citizen awareness program, and more. For more information on the USDSA and how you can help, visit usdeputy.org.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and text us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music.
This is Mommy's jam.
Then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Detective Ditzel with the Logan City Police. Law enforcement agencies are seeing a spike in vehicle thefts this year. A large majority of these crimes were due to unlocked doors and keys being left inside. We encourage citizens to protect themselves and make sure your vehicle is locked, the keys have been removed, and nothing of value has been left inside. Also, with colder temperatures here, don't leave your vehicle warming in the garage or driveway unattended. This is a prime opportunity for thieves. Don't become a victim.
You've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You have to carefully monitor your health for the rest of your life. And you have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease.
Cut, take two, action.
You've been diagnosed with a new purpose, to fight for the amazing life you made for yourself. To look that risk of heart disease square in the face and say, no, not me. You've been given a new opportunity to live. Get started at NoDiabetesByHeart.org.
My husband had a gun. Him and his friends would go shooting. When he stored the gun, he didn't know. In a million years, we never thought that Emily could there's a hole in our family that can never, ever be filled.
65 Americans a day die by gun suicide. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn more at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by Brady and the Ad Council.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 a.m. and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People, Tuesday, March 12th. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Governor Spencer Cox joining us in a bit. Okay, sort of. I just want to throw this out because this is roughly every 90 days-ish kind of thing they do. I think what they said was they would try and do this like quarterly, and they've stuck to that since Governor Cox was first elected. Governor Cox responding to something that, had also been a long-time complaint of mine here in Utah. And I don't mean this as a slight against any former governor. They operate in the, the media ecosystem that's available to them. But every month there would be this event, and they still do it, called Speak to the Governor. And the Salt Lake media outlets would host and broadcast and reprint and share video. And then you'd listen, and every caller was from Salt Lake. Every question was about Salt Lake or Davis County or Utah County, the more populous areas of the state. And it was interesting. And oftentimes, especially around the legislative session, you got a lot of insight into the thinking of the governor or things the governor was maybe planning on vetoing or something like that. But really just South Wasatch Front and Salt Lake centered. And Governor Cox, being from a rural area, when he came into office, he said, we'd like to do something on top of this for rural Utah. And so working with the Utah Broadcasters Association, consulting with us, consulting with other stations from the southern part of the state, they decided that on a sort of quarterly basis, roughly every 90 days, they would do this direct link event. Similar to Speak to the Governor, it's a call-in hour. It's unscripted, town hall style. Any question or comment is fair game as long as it's germane and not, something that, try to respect others' time and not give a speech so much as have a question, things like that. But any topic is fair game, and the governor comes in ready to answer any questions. And it's been fascinating to watch, to be honest with you. Now, again, this is a rotating thing, so it moves around the state. You have the ability. Thanks, Greg. They have the ability to do this from different locations and have different hosts. And so it's our turn. It's been a while, actually. I think we got skipped last time because the governor had to cancel one that was ours late last summer. So I'll be hosting tonight. This will run from 6 to 7. Because we're hosting, of course, our listeners get a little extra. And so I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago that we'd be doing this and asked listeners to submit their questions. And then I took those questions and kind of grouped them into, because a lot of them were just variations of the same theme. So I grouped them into a handful of questions that I'll be asking the governor in between phone calls for our listeners. So, and if you have a question, you can still send them in, kvnuftp@gmail.com. It is honestly, it's amazing to see the difference in concerns and topics and questions for the governor from rural Utah in contrast to what you might hear for a more, as I mentioned, Salt Lake City-oriented event. And it really, the first episode of this that we hosted, actually, we did the first one, that contrast was really starkly drawn for me. That what's going on in rural Utah, it's not to say that we aren't connected. Water is a good example of how we're connected. Decisions that might be made to save the Great Salt Lake could affect us here in northern Utah. Decisions for water management here in northern Utah could affect the Great Salt Lake. Now, the Great Salt Lake, without that, our ecosystem bellies up in a lot of ways. That affects everybody. Nobody thinks about this, but without the migratory birds, the agricultural crop-eating pests become quite a problem. As those pests become quite a problem, of course, the crops that you can grow effectively here in Utah change. Our economy changes. Many farms, family farms especially, go under. On top of that, you've lost the lake, so the dust is now floating in the air and collecting on our snowpack, even here in the mountains around Cache Valley, so our snowpack melts too quickly, and we experience a drought every year starting at the end of June. This isn't an exaggeration. This is literally, an example of how we are connected. The Great Salt Lake is not a Salt Lake City issue or a Wasatch Front issue, but there's realistic concern that as lawmakers try to grapple with something as important as saving the Great Salt Lake, that they'll run roughshod over water management plans here in northern Utah or southern Utah, and that's a very viable concern. This is just one example. Another example that I learned from that very first episode several years ago, that there were many things taking up a lot of air in the room in the more populous areas of the state that weren't even on the radar yet of rural areas. And I think more importantly, there were issues in Box Elder County, Rich County, parts of northern Cache Valley that weren't even getting discussed at events like Speak to the Governor or even legislative town halls. They weren't coming up. So Direct Link directly, see what I did there, changes that. It literally puts rural Utah and the concerns of rural Utah, those who live in rural Utah, in the spotlight. And so hats off to the governor for doing this. I wish it were possible to do this every month. The Utah Broadcast Association felt that was not sustainable, and they're probably right. They know more about the market out there than I do. But it's a really unique event. So I hope everyone listening now will be able to stick around for, I'm just going to call it a third hour of For the People, even though it'll have a different name and a different call-in number. That's really important, by the way. Again, the 753-5868 number you use for our show, not the same number you want to use for Direct Link. There will be a specific 800 number we'll throw out right as we move into that show at 6 o'clock. But you will still be hearing me because it's my turn to host. And
you'll be statewide.
Yeah. I've been trying to think of how to make a joke to the governor that's kind of loaded. I've decided not to. I'm not going to do it. But if you listen,
why not?
If you listen to this show, I've been very critical of the legislature and the governor for signing Senate Bill 240, the hide the calendars bill. And one of the reasons I'm critical of this is that having served on the State Transparency Advisory Board for almost a decade now, having seen how the legislature operates for 2 decades now, my problem with this, even if you could care less about whether you can see your lawmaker's professional calendar means they're by law they have to keep a calendar of what they did with their time on the taxpayer's dime. So this is when they're working as a legislative representative, not their professional calendar for their day job or what time with their family. This is when they are operating on the taxpayer's dime, who they met with, where they met, what they talked about, what they used their staff's time with, what they had their staff researching. All of those things are recorded on calendars. Lawmakers, high-level employees of counties, cities, the governor keeps a calendar like this, the attorney general, and lawmakers just buried them with Senate Bill 240. They said, you know what, the public doesn't get to know. And one lawmaker, Representative Kira Birkeland from Morgan County, said, if they want to know what we're up to, they can just ask us. Come on. But what my real problem with Senate Bill 240 is that it opens the gates. For years, Utah's Open Records and Management Law, GRAMA, Government Records Access and Management Act. GRAMA, first off, recognizes one of the best transparency laws in the nation. And secondly, untouchable. For years, lawmakers were afraid to even hint at changing it or carving out exceptions to public records and open government laws. And I like them to be afraid to do that. So my biggest problem with Senate Bill 240 isn't really just that it hides their calendars from us, which is bad enough in itself. My biggest problem is that it opens the gates to carving out exceptions anytime lawmakers feel like it to public records law. And the governor signed it in less than 24 hours. The veto was right there for him. Could have vetoed it. The public would have been behind him. He could have dared lawmakers to hold a veto override session. They don't want to have a session when the only thing they're going to be talking about is whether or not they want to hide something from the public. They would have not overridden that veto. It would have been perfect as a campaign talking point for the governor running for re-election. Everything was there for him. Signed it in less than 24 hours, no debate. So disappointed. So the joke I was going to make is I was going to say at the start, welcome, Governor. It's good to see you. We're only going to be talking about Senate Bill 240 tonight, just to see how he responds. And then I decided that just wasn't professional. So I'm making the joke now for our listeners because I won't do it when the rest of the state is listening. But believe me, I have talked
Maybe the governor's listening, so
he already knows how I feel about this. We had a few social media exchanges about this, and he disagrees, to say the least, but I'm right. We'll be back with more of KVN News for the People right after this.
I'm Jason Walton, candidate for U.S. Senate. I'm recording from the Tucson sector of our southern border, and nobody's here. Our government should defend our territory, but President Biden, Mitch McConnell, and career politicians are funding war in other countries while the cartels are waging unchecked war here on American soil. I'm standing up to build the wall, end catch and release, and secure the border. Stand with me. I'm Jason Walton, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Friends of Jason Walton for Senate.
24 NCAA appearances, 17 conference championships, 10 tournament championships. New head coach Danny Sprinkle and the Aggies are carrying on their commitment to excellence.
Tip to Brown. Brown at the three. Yes! It's the three. What a shot.
The Utah State Aggies play here with pregame beginning 1 hour before tip-off, play-by-play and post-game interviews and Aggie call afterwards. It's Aggie basketball on News Talk KVNU.
Cache County Auditor candidate Matthew Funk joining us at the start of Hour 2 of today's show. This will be the first of our spotlights on the candidates for county, council, water district, county attorney. There are a lot of candidates. So stay tuned as we continue to spotlight these candidates. And just a quick note out there, because I'm having some trouble. But if you are a Cache County Auditor candidate other than Matthew Funk, please call me back. I've left messages with you all, and we'd love to spotlight each and every one of you here on the show so voters have a chance to get to know you through our airwaves. And, Matthew, the only candidate I've heard back from so far. So he gets the first spot. He'll be joining us at 5:10 today. And a quick reminder on this. This is a new position, kind of, inside the county. The auditor job has existed as long as the county has existed. Well, actually, that's not true. I think it was new in the 70s or early 80s. But either way, a long time. There's been an auditor job, a responsibility to do at least a bare minimum of financial audits and things like that. When Jess Bradfield assumed the role of Cache County Clerk and Auditor, he brought audits back after decades of them being kind of an afterthought, if done at all. And I love that. I love the idea of regular, aggressive audits. Audits aren't meant to get anyone in trouble. Audits aren't meant to create an adversarial environment between departments or anything like that. Audits are to just assess things, both for the taxpayer but also for the elected officials, governing councils, and more. An audit can reveal shortcomings in processes. An audit can reveal waste of money, not intended. State auditors, for example, have found boards and committees that the legislature created 50 years ago that were still getting stipends and money, even though the board hadn't met for decades. No one intended for that to happen, but it was no one's job to go back and look and see if the rolls could be cleaned up a bit. And that is an example, I think, of how audits can be very useful. So I think despite the circus that the Cache County Council has been the last couple of years, and I do mean circus, and not in a fun, way, the best decision I've seen the council make in quite some time was to separate the Cache County clerk and auditor positions into separate positions. Now, this means that there will be an additional elected position here in Cache County, the county auditor. But what I like about this is you're going to now have this separate office dedicated to auditing. That will be this individual and their team's only responsibility to conduct regular audits. And again, you have 4 people vying for this spot in its first elected process of filling the position. So this doesn't do away with the Cache County clerk position. Obviously, we couldn't do that. We wouldn't want to do that. But in that position, of course, you have kind of an open race with the incumbent deciding not to run for re-election. And so a lot to get to. So we'll kick it off with Matthew Funk joining us at 5:10. And again, he will be followed by one of the most interesting Pew surveys on teen social media use I've seen. The governor and the legislature talking about this a lot. If you want to prep for this conversation, because I'd love to hear from listeners on this as we get to it at 5:30, it's linked on our Facebook page right now. It throws a lot of conventional wisdom about social media, smartphones, internet usage, and young people on its head. And even legislative leaders are saying we might need to rethink how we've approached social media through policy. Link on our Facebook page now. On the other side of the news, this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas. This week on the topic of religious freedom and a bill passed in the legislative session that didn't get as much attention as it probably deserved, and what Sutherland recommends for forthcoming family-friendly policy bills, including, this might be controversial, a possibility that the conservative think tank based in Salt Lake City might endorse what is traditionally a liberally championed issue, paid family leave. Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas episode for our show after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:31, and the news is brought to you by Logan Extermination. A 67-year-old school bus driver from Midvale was among 4 people injured, including 2 students, when a semi crashed into the bus in northern Idaho on Monday. According to a statement from Idaho State Police, the Utah driver was transporting 2 students northbound on Highway 95 in the Cambridge, Idaho area just before 5 p.m. when the crash happened. According to the Idaho State Patrol in a statement, while the bus was temporarily stopped for unloading, it was struck from behind by a semi and trailer being driven by a 56-year-old man from Stites, Idaho. The school bus overturned and both vehicles came to rest in the roadway. Authorities said the drivers of both vehicles were transported by ambulance. The 2 students were transported to the hospital via personal vehicle. Details on what may have caused the truck to hit the bus were not included in the statement. Police did not say if impairment was being investigated as a possible factor. The Midvale bus driver's identity was not released, and information on the drivers and the students' current conditions had not been released. Oregon authorities have identified a married couple from Idaho as the victims of a small plane crash that killed everyone on board. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office says a husband and wife from Caldwell, Idaho, were the 2 people on board the aircraft. The single-engine Piper PA-32 crashed Sunday night near Madras in Central Oregon after taking off from Aurora, south of Portland. A National Transportation Safety Board investigator visited the site Monday to document the wreckage. The NTSB has opened an investigation into the crash. KBNU News Time is 4:33.
Edward, spring's almost here. Will you please call Logan Extermination to come prune the trees?
I think I'm going to save some money and do it myself. It can't be that hard, can it? There you go. My masterpiece.
Ew, that's hideous. I'm going to call the pros at Logan Extermination. Hopefully it's not too late.
Don't make the same mistake as Mr. Scissorhands. Call Logan Extermination today and get a jump on tree pruning. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
ABC News, I'm Daria Aldinger. For 5 hours today, Special Counsel Robert Hur answered the House Judiciary Committee's questions about his investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents. White House counsel spokesman Ian Sams after the hearing.
It's time to move on. House Republicans tried to make it a big deal. They want to attack the president politically. They're making it very obvious that they're trying to help the former president. And it's a failure.
Republicans slammed her for not bringing criminal charges against the president. Democrats accused him of unnecessarily including language about the president's mental state. The White House says it's cobbled together another $300 million in military assistance for Ukraine. A man and a woman were found dead at the scene of a house explosion and fire near Pittsburgh. Both President Biden and former President Trump could earn enough delegates in tonight's contests to clinch their party's nominations. This is ABC News.
KBNU weather, we do now have a high wind watch in effect from late Wednesday night through Friday morning for a large area of northern Utah, including the northern Wasatch Front and also the Cache Valley. Looks like from late Wednesday night through Friday morning, currently the strongest winds look to be Thursday night. There is a good chance of wind gusts in excess of 55 miles per hour. High winds may move loose debris, damage property, and cause power outages. Travel could be difficult due to crosswinds, especially for high-profile vehicles and vehicles with trailers, including I-15 and US 89. Aside from that, tonight, rain and snow likely before midnight, then a chance of snow, low in the upper 20s. A slight chance of snow on Wednesday, high in the upper 30s. Mostly cloudy Wednesday night, and then mostly sunny on Thursday, mid-40s, with a good chance of those canyon winds with us again starting on Wednesday night. It's been to 44 today. It's 42 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather is brought to you by Roof Rescue, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry from minor repairs to complete roof replacement. See roofrescueusa.com or call 435-999-4268. You can always get more news at cachevalleydaily.com. And let's get a business update now, brought to you by Edward Jones.
From ABC News Wall Street now, stocks soared despite a so-so report on inflation. The Dow rose 236 points, and NASDAQ added 246, and the S&P closed up 57 points at an all-time high. Consumer prices picked up last month, a sign that inflation is still a challenge for President Biden's re-election effort, as well as the Federal Reserve. Both are counting on prices easing gradually. The latest consumer price index found otherwise, saying prices rose 0.4% from January to February, up slightly from the previous month's 0.3. Prices were up 3.2% year over year, faster than January's 3.1%. The producer price index will be released on Thursday. It measures prices at the wholesale level before they reach consumers. Usually they move in tandem, but not always. After weeks of testing, the IRS is rolling out Direct File, its first electronic filing system, to taxpayers in 12 states. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
The Above and Beyond Salute.
Hello?
Is Emily Jones there?
Yeah.
Several weeks ago, we got an anonymous submission from someone up in Preston telling us about how you have taught English for years. They also told us how you coach cross-country, track, also you're involved with the basketball team 24/7. How do you do it?
My husband is really the one that does it all. I support.
Tell you thanks. We've got a $40 gift card for you from Firehouse Subs.
All right, wow. That's very nice of you.
The Above and Beyond Salute on News Talk KVNU.
Unlock your media career at this year's Broadcasters Job Fair. Join us on Wednesday, March 13th at the University of Utah Student Union Ballroom from 9 a.m. to noon. Learn about broadcasting opportunities in radio and TV by pre-registering at utahbroadcasters.com. Companies from around the state will be there to discuss job and internship positions, so don't miss this opportunity to kickstart your career in the exciting world of TV and radio broadcasting. It's Wednesday, March 13th. The Utah Broadcasters Job Fair brought to you in part by the Cache Valley Media Group.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. We've done a lot of legislative session recapping here on the show because it was a wild legislative session. And a lot of it, the legislative session was dominated by 4 or 5 big bills that got most of the attention, in most cases deservedly. And then, of course, the last 2 weeks dominated by this discussion of this package to entice Major League Baseball and National Hockey League into town with some taxpayer-funded incentives to build stadiums and things like that. And so understandably, a lot flew under the radar. So we've broken down some of the education policy. We've broken down some of the water policy. Sutherland Institute, though, did something interesting in their Defending Ideas episode this week. And as regular listeners know, Nick Dunn and crew at Sutherland Institute are nice enough to send us a sneak peek of the Defending Ideas episode each week. And we've got it for you here because this week Nick Dunn sits down with all of Sutherland Institute's policy experts, the people who basically live and breathe the legislature and public policy at the state level. Stan Rasmussen, he's their VP of Government Affairs. He's their lobbyist, basically, for Sutherland, the conservative think tank. Christine Cook, who is their education policy fellow. Bill Duncan, who tracks the legislature from the constitutional law and religious liberties perspective. And Derek Monson, Chief Growth Officer, who tracks basically everything the legislature does as much as he can. Nick talked to all of them, and they sent along, again, a sneak peek of this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas to try and answer this question. How did family-oriented policy, from policy dealing with leave and childcare to policy dealing with tax credits and even help in buying a first home for newly married couples and more, how did that policy fare? What passed? What didn't? What were some of the debates indicative of as far as the legislature's priorities? Here is Nick Dunn and crew at the Sutherland Institute in this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas.
Of what happened with respect to family policy that Sutherland was involved with? Is this session, can we view it as a win for families?
I definitely think so. There were some good steps forward taken on family policy, 2 of which we were directly involved with. One was a resolution supporting the success sequence, the idea that if you graduate high school, work full-time, and get married before you have kids, if you choose to have kids, that you will be out of poverty at a 97% clip and more than 9 in 10, regardless of gender, race, other socioeconomic status growing up, and those kinds of things. And so this resolution not only supported that, a little bit of a symbolic measure, but it asked the Utah State Board of Education to look at how we can take the concept, the facts of the success sequence, that 97% figure, for instance, and incorporate it into public school classrooms in the curriculum we teach, so that the same way we teach kids about the facts about health, about financial well-being and the financial literacy courses and civics and all those kinds of things that allow them to then make their own decisions and lead the lives that they want. They ought to have this information as well about their life decisions and what the impacts of those are, which people maybe intuitively already understand, but putting numbers to it, making this stark comparison of everything you hear about gaps in racial economic outcomes is not the same when you follow this sequence. That's a striking thing. And so putting it in those terms can potentially impact people and reach kids in ways that might be more difficult to do otherwise. So that legislation passed and passed broad margins, which was encouraging to see. Another bill created officially within the structure of the state government an Office of Families. This is something that the governor had done by executive order previously as a kind of informal advisor office in his office. And this legislation put it within the state structure of the Department of Health and Human Services. And the reason this is important is in the social science research, it is very clear that family structure matters for any number of outcomes: education, economic, social, emotional, mental health, all those kinds of issues. But we don't track that in state reporting and state data collection. We track a lot of stuff that's important, but that's one that we don't. And it's plain when you look into research that it is critical. And so what this office is going to do, in addition to looking at policy ideas and examining solutions that help families economically and socially and otherwise for the purposes of the governor's office and the Department of Health, it's going to start collecting some of this data that in some cases we're already collecting. The Department of Health does an annual survey where they collect some of this information, but it hasn't been focused on and publicly reported in a way that allows us to understand the impact of family on health outcomes. And being in the Department of Health, they're going to naturally collect that information. The Office of Families under this new law is also empowered to go and collect that information from other entities. For instance, when you look at how much tax revenue comes from married households versus not married households, it's pretty dramatic where, where's the bread buttered, as they say, for the state. And so when we create policy around taxes that neglects that reality, we may be actually hurting ourselves long-term by unintended consequences of how we encourage or discourage family formation. And so again, it's collecting this information, getting it out there, just helping people understand, policymakers as well as the public, the impact that family has on policy. And there will be steps in the future on both of these arenas, that we need to take. But these are good starts, and so it's a step in the right direction.
Derek, one of the things that strikes me about those two bills in particular is it seems to be focusing on how can we empower people and strengthen the actual institutions themselves. So in this case, families you're talking about. There are, of course, other programs that are ancillary to families that try and provide support. But these bills specifically, is there information we can bring to bear that will actually help to strengthen families themselves and how policy impacts those things, and also empower people with information. And if you look at it as kind of two columns, that the success sequence and providing information about the economic outcomes of the success sequence to young people is essentially we're saying we're going to give more information to young people that's going to help them make decisions about their lives. And then on the other side, incorporating family structure data reporting in government reports and all that publicly accessible data is providing more information to policymakers. And so we're essentially saying whether you're a young person starting your life or you're a person who is elected to help make decisions, we want to make sure both of those groups have better information about the importance of families and the impact of family structure so that they can make decisions that will affect either their own lives or Utahns if they're a policymaker. So I just want to highlight that and ask you to expand on that if there's anything that stands out to you, but that this is information on multiple levels that's helping to emphasize the importance of family stability for outcomes for everyone.
That's right. From either the life standpoint or from the policymaking standpoint, the decisions you make and the quality and the outcomes of those decisions is in significant measure driven by the information upon which you're making those decisions. So if we have good information, it doesn't always guarantee a good outcome in a person's life or in a policy decision. But it makes it a lot more likely than if we're making decisions in a vacuum of information where we simply don't really know what we're getting into, and then lots of potential problems can come up. So that's what this really is making sure we have the information to make wise decisions in policy, in various realms of policy, again, be it economic, education, health, or directly family policy related to things like marriage and divorce and those kinds of things, as well as, again, empowering people to have that information themselves to make their life decisions.
So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about elections policy. Of course, in recent years, how we vote, the security of those votes, It has been a topic of conversation, and there's, of course, been a lot of controversy around that. And not to get into too much controversy, but there were some pieces of legislation this past session that looked at that looked at refining in some ways just how we cast our ballots here in Utah. Can you give us a quick rundown of a couple of the things that were discussed, and what do our listeners need to know about what did or didn't make it out of the session this year?
Yeah, there were multiple bills that really ran in the election policy space, but two of significant note were an effort to end the municipal ranked choice voting pilot program. And that's a program that's slated to go through the 2025 municipal election cycle. There was an effort to end it now so that it wouldn't go in 2025. And that effort passed in the House and then did not pass in the Senate. And the other one was an effort to restrict vote by mail in a variety of ways. It kind of evolved over time, but ultimately it was about making vote by mail something that was less the default option than either an opt-in option or something that you could lose the privilege of, the easy access to if you showed a track record not voting. And both those efforts failed. And really, I think what that reflected, and this is based on my own observation as well as some polling data that we did on both of these issues, was that those election proposals did not reflect the broad experience of voters in the state of Utah. So in the ranked choice voting example, there was roughly a dozen cities that continue to use ranked choice voting over the last several cycles. And so that means the large majority of cities haven't opted in, haven't used ranked choice voting. And there have been a number of cities that have tried it out, not like their experience, and backed out. But the idea that we should therefore just end it means the experience of those dozen cities that continue to like it and see the benefits of it is simply being ignored. And I think that generated a lot of pushback in the Senate, that we're just taking this away preemptively and without really examining why the cities that want to keep it, In the vote by mail context, there has been, Utah has organically grown vote by mail to the point where today it's the default option. That started out as a small pilot program about a dozen years ago. And again, it's grown since then. And voters have become very comfortable with it. In polling we did on this issue, we asked how confident are Utah likely voters that their ballots are being counted accurately in a vote by mail, and over about 80% of people, voters said they are confident. They said at a similar rate that they're confident it produces fair outcomes, and a little over 70% said they think vote by mail elections are secure.
There you have it. This week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas here for the People. Thanks to Nick Dunn and crew for sending these along each week. It's a pleasure to be able to spotlight the work of Sutherland on the show again on a regular basis. And now we open up the phone lines. What do you think about all this? That was the legislative recap on family policy, policy that affects our engagement with our public officials, elections and otherwise, and everything, basically, from Sutherland Institute this week. What are your thoughts? Their recap was, I would say, positive, though, as Duncan said there, there's a lot to be done still. Some incremental steps were taken, and the legislature, I think, still has a long ways to go on dealing with what is basically a child care crisis in Utah. I'm actually surprised they kind of just pretended it wasn't there this year, but I don't think the money was there to do much about it. What do you think? 753-5868. What's your take on Sutherland's take on the policies passed this legislative session? We'll be back right after this.
Furniture and mattress stores come and go, but there's a reason family-owned and operated UNI Furniture has been here for 95 years. Bring in your tax return. UNI has closeout prices on select mattress models, including some displays. On a budget and looking for a less expensive entry-level mattress? They have it. Want something more supportive to support more weight? UNI has that. Sleep cooler and sleep better on a copper memory foam mattress. UNI sells sheets from Bedgear, a cooler sheet to breathe. That's why there's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
Spring is here and new deals are blooming at Murdoch Volkswagen. Pick your new car at our spring sales event. Everything feels new in spring, so pick a Murdoch VW and drive renewed. Receive 0% for 5 years on a Tiguan or 1.9% for 5 years on an Atlas or Atlas Crossport. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family at Murdoch Volkswagen in Logan or online at murdochvw.com.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 4/1/24.
The Cache Valley Media Group Home and Garden Show, presented by Anderson Seed and Garden, is Friday and Saturday, March 22nd and 23rd at the Eccles Ice Center in North Logan. A sure sign spring is on the way. Experience hundreds of home and gardening ideas. This year's Home and Garden Show has over 100 businesses that are excited to help your home and yard look better than ever. The Cache Valley Media Group Home and Garden Show, March 22nd and 23rd at the Eccles Ice and Event Center in North Logan. Don't miss this year's show.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. With inflation unexpectedly rising last month, President Biden has a new narrative developing for his campaign right after his State of the Union. Also, how the delayed FAFSA form is hurting current college students. And in pursuit of easy profits, passive income from vending machines is trending. We'll examine the low startup costs and simple formula. Wednesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Reminder again, we have Cache County Auditor candidate Matthew Funk joining us at the start of Hour 2. And then an hour from that, 6 o'clock, a bonus hour of For the People, if you will. Well, at least a bonus hour of me. I'll be sticking around tonight.
And you have a guest, right?
Yeah, some Spencer guy. I don't know. Plays bass. Drives around in a big black SUV. Or
went to the USU game.
Was it the USU game Saturday?
Saturday,
you may have seen him there. Governor Spencer Cox is partaking in this latest episode of Direct Link with Governor Cox. Again, for those who missed my explanation at the start of the hour, if you've never heard one of these, you definitely want to. This is a direct response that the governor actually initiated himself, to his credit. And working with the Utah Broadcast Association, the governor said, look, we do this Speak to the Governor event each month with Salt Lake media, but it stays very Salt Lake centered. The questions, the comments, the discussion itself, very centered on the Salt Lake area, Utah County area, Southern Wasatch Front area. Rural areas need their own thing. And so the governor, we started doing this Direct Link event every quarter, roughly every 90 days. And it moves throughout the state. So every locale gets a chance to host and kind of, more so populate the phone calls. And it is our turn. So I'll be hosting Direct Link with the governor tonight starting at 6 o'clock. I do have some questions from our listeners sent in at my request over the last couple of weeks that I've grouped together into just a few questions because a lot of them were the same question worded differently. But the phone lines will be open again, though, not our regular line. 6 to 7 p.m. tonight for the Direct Link with Governor Cox event. There will be a special 800 number because, again, this is a statewide event. I'll be hosting, and you'll hear it here on our airwaves on KVNU, but it is simultaneously rebroadcast throughout the state. So in rural areas, to give rural areas a chance to win. So a lot of the calls will not come from Cache Valley. A lot will, I hope. So I'm plugging this again and again because last time we did this, we didn't have a single caller from Cache Valley weigh in. And that can't happen again. This is our opportunity to remember we're still a part of rural Utah, even though the legislature calls us a satellite community of the Wasatch Front now. I think they're wrong, at least for another couple of years maybe. But this is definitely an opportunity for our listeners in Rich and Box Elder County to ask their questions from the governor if you have a topic or an issue that you'd like to hear the governor's thoughts on. I have a couple, again, that I've prepared from questions our listeners have sent in over the last couple of weeks, grouped together mainly about water and water management and the Save the Great Salt Lake effort and what it might mean for water development and water rules here in northern Utah. Obviously a big concern of our agricultural community, worried that well-intended and necessary efforts to save the Great Salt Lake could trample on northern Utah. I don't think it has to play out that way, but it definitely could if we're not vigilant. So That is definitely a question I'll get in there if we have a break between calls. If we don't, we'll let callers drive the whole conversation. So, again, direct link with Governor Cox coming up at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7 p.m. tonight. Me hosting, the governor answering your questions. I'll literally be here just to get things rolling and to facilitate the question asking of the governor. So otherwise, it's up to you guys to populate that hour. And again, last time we had a chance to host, not a single call from Cache Valley. Let's not have that happen again. Again, it won't be our regular studio line, the 753-5868 number. That is not the number you'll call 6 to 7. There will be a separate 800 number. We'll give that out right at the start of the hour, and I'll repeat it several times throughout the hour. And make sure you have a chance. And please, make sure Cache Valley's voice is heard tonight. Get a question or two in at least. And that, again, is 6 to 7 p.m. tonight. Coming up in hour 2 of our regular show, though, at 5:10, we'll get things underway with Matthew Funk, our first spotlight on Cache County candidates. There are a lot of them, from the attorney's office to the new Cache County auditor position, separated out from the Cache County clerk's office recently by the county council. We have council positions open. We have the water district. There are elections there. School board. We've got a lot of candidates to get to for county-wide races. So we'll be kicking that off, what's going to be a few weeks of candidates, to be honest with you, to get to them all, with our first, Matthew Funk, county auditor candidate, will be joining us at the start of hour 2 of today's show. So hope you'll stick around. And also, if you have a question for Matthew or about the new position itself, 753-5868. This is going to be a fun one because, well, let's be honest with you. Matthew, as our first candidate, is running for a position that didn't exist last year at this time. So there are a lot of questions about this. I'm excited because a separate auditor position means fully focused on auditing. But what exactly does this office mean? What is it all about? Those are still kind of up in the air questions. So it's going to be interesting talking to a candidate running for an office that no one's held before. But we're going to do that. Again, Matthew Funk, our first spotlight on the candidates, coming up at 5:10 in hour 2 of today's show, right after this, here on KVNU Logan.
Your station for the Aggies. News Talk KVNU Logan, 102 FM, 610 AM. And on Alexa, Google, online, or the app. The home for the Aggies.